Come closer, dear one, and sit by the fire. Let the night hush around you for a while, because I'm going to tell you a story about a little house at the edge of a whispering forest. A house that never stayed the same for long. Some said it was built on magic. Others said it had a heart that remembered. But all I know is that when Mara came to live there, the walls began to move, the rooms began to breathe, and the cottage woke up as if it had been waiting just for her. So settle in, listen close, and don't be frightened if the kettle whistles or the floor creaks. That's just the house saying hello. The wind whispered through the trees as Mara's old car crunched along the gravel path leading to the cottage. The smell of wet earth and wildflowers brushing against her nose. And for a moment, she felt as if she had stepped into a dream. The kind that hugs you with both comfort and curiosity. The kind where something extraordinary is just around the corner. The cottage rose at the edge of the forest, with ivy curling gently up its stone walls and the soft gray mist curling around its eaves, the windows glowing like warm eyes in the twilight, and Mara could feel the pulse of history in the old wood beneath her fingers as she turned the heavy brass key, the door swinging open with a gentle creak inside. The air smelled faintly of cedar and old books, the kind that carried whispers of laughter and footsteps long gone, the floors worn smooth from years of careful walking, the furniture small and sturdy, welcoming in the way a favorite blanket folds around you. And Mara stepped in slowly, her hands brushing the edges of chairs and tables as if testing whether the cottage had been waiting for her. She explored room by room, each one holding its quiet story. The kitchen with copper pots catching the last rays of the sun. The sitting room with a faded rug that smelled faintly of lavender. And the little bedroom with a window that looked out over the wildflowers. Her fingers tracing the patterns of dust motes dancing in the warm light. And for the first night, it all felt ordinary, safe, and oddly like coming home. But morning arrived with a subtle tremor, the kind you notice before you understand it. The floorboards groaning softly under her bare feet as Mara stretched and yawned, only to blink in surprise when she realized the kitchen now stood where the sitting room had been. The tiny porcelain teacups sitting on a different counter, the rug she had admired gone, and the sunlight falling at a new angle through a window she didn't remember. Her heart fluttered with a mix of wonder and unease, Mara pacing slowly from room to room, muttering to herself, "I must be dreaming. It's just the morning light playing tricks." But the cottage remained stubbornly rearranged, each door opening to a space she recognized, and yet did not, her mind swirling with questions that felt both thrilling and strange, as if the house itself was waking and stretching, testing her gently with every shift. She sank into the armchair in what used to be her sitting room, now holding the familiar smells of the kitchen, closing her eyes to breathe in the cedar and bread, feeling the warmth of the morning sunlight on her face, and letting her thoughts drift to the woman who had left this place for her, someone she barely remembered, yet somehow felt connected to through the cozy walls and shifting corners, the house whispering its secret language softly around her. And as Mara rose to explore again, her hand brushing a window pane, fogged by the cool morning air, she paused at the threshold of the next room, a shiver of anticipation threading through her, for she could feel, almost like a heartbeat beneath the floorboards, that this cottage held more mysteries than she could yet imagine. And perhaps, if she listened closely, it would show her them in time. The morning light spilled across the uneven floors, gilding the furniture with soft gold, the cottage sighing as if settling into a new pose. And Mara, key still warm in her hand, stepped toward the next door, curious and cautious, ready to see where the house might lead her next. The morning sunlight spilled softly through the windows as Mara tiptoed down the hallway, the wooden floor cool beneath her bare feet, the scent of old cedar and fresh linen drifting from the bedrooms. And for a moment, everything felt just as it had the day before, familiar and safe, until she stopped in her tracks, blinking in disbelief. The hallway she had walked through countless times the previous day was gone, replaced by a blank wall, smooth and unyielding, the little rug that had run along its length nowhere in sight, and a gentle hush filled the air as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting to see what she would do next. Mara turned slowly, tracing her fingers along the walls, whispering, "It can't be. I must have imagined it." But the firmness of the wood beneath her touch told a different story, the air shifting faintly as she moved, carrying a hint of lavender and the warm, earthy smell of the forest outside. And she realized that something within the cottage was awake, aware and quietly playful. Each morning from then on brought small surprises, doors opening into rooms that had been elsewhere the day before, the windows framing new views of the garden or the misty forest beyond. And Mara walked the cottage like a careful explorer, stepping lightly, listening to the soft creak of hinges, the whisper of curtains brushing against the floors, and the distant sound of birds calling, each note ringing differently depending on where she stood. She paused by the sitting room, running her hands over the familiar armchair, feeling its comfort and warmth, and thought about her Grayton, imagining her moving through these same rooms, perhaps smiling at the gentle tricks the house liked to play, Mara's heart fluttering with a mixture of wonder and cautious delight, her thoughts drifting to memories she hadn't remembered until the rooms shifted, flashes of childhood visits and afternoons spent reading by the fireplace. It was not frightening. The cottage felt alive but not menacing, as if it were stretching or sighing in its sleep, nudging her gently to notice, to remember, to feel the pulse of its hidden rhythms. And Mara found herself speaking softly to it. "Are you showing me stories, old friend?" Her voice barely louder than a whisper, filling the still air with warmth and a sense of companionship. The soft creak of a floorboard made her start slightly, yet she smiled, her fingers tracing the edge of the new doorways, the scent of wildflowers drifting through the open windows, sunlight glinting off a copper kettle that had moved overnight, and Mara felt a quiet thrill at the mystery, a gentle curiosity that wrapped around her heart like a warm shawl. And as she drifted toward the kitchen, now in a corner she hadn't expected, the cottage seemed to exhale, the wooden beams settling into place, the air holding a soft promise of new discoveries waiting for tomorrow, the house humming softly like a secret lullaby, inviting her to follow wherever it might lead. Mara's fingers traced the worn wooden planks of the hallway, the grain rough and warm beneath her touch, the morning sunlight filtering through the laced curtains and scattering gold across the floor, when a small draft teased at her sleeve, carrying the faint scent of old paper and cedar, and something made her pause. A little tug at the edge of her curiosity, she knelt down carefully, pressing her hand along the edges of the floorboards, feeling one plank that shifted slightly under her touch, a tiny hollow beneath it, humming softly as if waiting for her to notice. And with a gentle lift, the board gave way to a small cavity hidden from casual eyes, where an envelope lay tucked in like a secret waiting patiently for discovery. The envelope was thin and creamy, worn at the edges, the handwriting delicate and familiar, curling gracefully across the paper, as if her taunt had reached out across the years to whisper a story directly into her hands. And Mara's breath caught softly, her fingertips tracing the familiar loops as she lifted the letter. Feeling a warmth, like a quiet hug, she unfolded it slowly, the paper crackling softly, carrying the faint perfume of lavender and old ink, and read the words penned in gentle, flowing script. The house remembers what you forget, a simple sentence that hummed with hidden meaning, and Mara felt a shiver of both wonder and reverence, imagining her Grattant wandering these same halls, guiding her from beyond. Alongside the letter lay a small sketch of the cottage, drawn in fine, careful lines, the rooms shifting and flowing into one another in ways that seemed almost alive. And one room was circled in soft ink, a space Mara had never seen, the corners curling like it was breathing quietly on the page, inviting her to explore further, to seek what lay hidden just beyond her sight. Mara's heart fluttered as she studied the drawing, her mind buzzing with questions. Could the house really be remembering things I have forgotten? She whispered to herself, her eyes lingering on the tiny room marked with such care, a part of the cottage that existed only in memory and imagination, and yet somehow felt achingly familiar. She tucked the letter and sketch carefully into her sweater pocket, the paper warm against her chest, her fingers lingering over the edges, thinking of her great-aunt's gentle voice echoing in her imagination, telling her to trust the house, to notice the subtle shifts and the quiet language of walls and hallways. Mara felt a soft reassurance bloom inside her, a sense that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The room smelled faintly of cedar and candle wax, the sunlight moving slowly across the polished floor, carrying tiny motes of dust that sparkled like little stars in the quiet morning. And Mara, rising to her feet, glanced around at the shifting doors and windows with a small, hopeful smile, ready to follow the whispers of the house and discover the hidden room her Grattant had marked. And as she stepped toward the next doorway, the sunlight spilling in like a gentle promise, Mara felt the house sigh softly around her, the boards warm under her feet, the air humming with secrets just waiting to be found, a quiet invitation lingering in the golden light, drawing her forward into the next adventure. The morning sun filtered softly through the lace curtains, dust motes drifting lazily like tiny golden fireflies, and Mara padded across the polished floor, her slippers whispering against the wood when she noticed it. A narrow door tucked into a corner she hadn't seen before, its surface smooth and dark, the brass handle glinting in the gentle light. Curiosity fluttered in her chest as she turned the handle, the door opening with a quiet creak that felt almost like a greeting, and she stepped inside to discover a cozy little library, the air warm with the comforting scent of ink and old parchment. the shelves stacked with journals of all shapes and sizes, their spines worn from years of gentle handling, each one a small testament to time held carefully in hand. Mara ran her fingers along the rows, feeling the textured leather and soft cloth covers, the pages slightly yellowed with age, each one humming quietly with memory, and she began to read, discovering that the journals recorded the daily changes in the cottage, notes about walls that had shifted, windows that faced new views, and the soft sighs of floorboards settling into unfamiliar places. The house speaking through the careful script of her gratin. Her eyes widened as she turned page after page, the records stopping abruptly 20 years ago, the pen pausing as if mid-thought, and Mara's heartbeat quickened with a mix of wonder and longing, imagining the hands that had written these lines, the laughter and quiet footsteps that had passed through these rooms. The stories held carefully within each journal like whispers waiting to be heard again. She sank onto a small velvet chair by the window, the soft cushion hugging her, and spoke softly to the library. "Did you wait all this time for me to find you?" Her voice barely louder than a sigh, the journals seeming to hum back in silent acknowledgement. The cozy room wrapping her in warmth and the gentle thrill of secrets revealed. Mara, feeling her connection to her gratin deepen with every turn of the page. The hours slipped by unnoticed, sunlight shifting slowly across the room, the spines of the journals glowing golden, until night began to settle, and Mara, reluctant to leave, stepped back to stretch her legs, only to blink in surprise when the library was gone. The little door replaced once more by the plain wall, the scent of ink and candle wax lingering faintly in the air like a memory that refused to leave. A soft shiver of awe ran through her as she touched the empty wall, the warmth of the room still lingering in her fingers. Mara whispering to herself, "It wants me to find it again, doesn't it?" Her heart full of quiet wonder, the cottage around her humming with gentle life, as if it had shared a secret and expected her to keep it carefully in her mind. She walked back toward her bedroom, the moonlight spilling through the unmoving windows, the house breathing softly in the night, the shadows long and kind, carrying the promise that tomorrow the library might return, waiting patiently for her to discover more of its whispered stories. And Mara felt a gentle thrill of anticipation, a quiet certainty that the cottage had more secrets yet to unfold. Mara's footsteps echoed softly on the wooden floor as she wandered through the cottage, the morning light stretching across the walls and the faint scent of cedar wrapping around her. When she noticed a narrow archway that hadn't been there before, its edges smooth and inviting, the air humming gently with the promise of something both familiar and new stepping through. She found herself in a room bathed in soft, golden light, the walls lined with portraits that seemed to watch her with kind, knowing eyes, each face painted with delicate care, capturing generations of her family in moments of quiet pride and gentle laughter. The brushstrokes telling stories she had only half remembered. Tucked away in the corners of her heart, she moved slowly along the walls, her fingers grazing the gilded frames, the paintings warm to her touch, as if they held the echoes of those who had sat for them. The room smelling faintly of turpentine and aged paper, a faint whisper of old candle wax lingering in the corners. And Mara realized that the portraits were alive in memory, holding the love and presence of those who had come before her. At the far end of the room, she paused, heart fluttering, for there was a painting she did not recognize, a canvas that seemed to shimmer ever so slightly, and she stepped closer to discover it was herself, brush in hand, painting the same cottage she now explored, the background shifting subtly each time her eyes returned, showing different versions of the rooms she had wandered, some cozy, some wild, some half-lit in mist, all of them beautiful in their own way. Mara's breath caught, a gentle smile touching her lips. "Is it really me?" she whispered softly, the words drifting across the room, the painting mirroring her wonder and curiosity, a quiet reminder that she was part of this long, unfolding story, that the house, the portraits, and her grattan's gentle spirit had been waiting for her to arrive. To see and be seen, she sank onto a small stool beneath the painting, the wood cool beneath her fingers, thinking of the generations of her family, their laughter and quiet moments, the shared love that had threaded through their lives, and she felt a warm connection, a soft tug at her heart, as if the cottage itself was embracing her, guiding her gently, whispering, "You belong here." Mara, the room smelled faintly of lavender and varnish, the sunlight catching the edges of each frame, casting golden reflections onto the floor, the quiet creak of the floorboards beneath her feet punctuating the gentle hum of the cottage, the walls alive with history and memory, soft and alive, welcoming her into the rhythm of its stories. She lingered, brushing her fingers along the edge of her own painted frame, marveling at the way the background shifted, the cottage in the portrait showing corners she had yet to see, shadows where she hadn't walked, sunlight where she hadn't noticed it, the room carrying a soft, enchanting promise that there was still more to discover. And as Mara rose to leave, the warm light spilling across the floor, the portraits seeming to smile in quiet encouragement, she felt the cottage sigh softly around her, its walls stretching gently, and a whisper of anticipation brushed through her thoughts, promising that the next room held yet another secret waiting to be found. Mara's fingers brushed along the carved edges of an antique door, the wood smooth and cool beneath her touch, the faint scent of beeswax and aged pine drifting from its frame, and she paused, listening to the soft creak of the hinges as she pushed it open, the quiet air inside seeming to hum with gentle anticipation. The room was small and candlelit, the flames flickering softly and casting dancing shadows across the walls, the air warm and fragrant with a hint of wax and cedar, the polished wooden floor reflecting the golden glow in a way that made the space feel both intimate and infinite. And at the far end stood a full-length mirror, its silver frame intricately detailed, glinting with a quiet, mysterious light. Mara stepped closer, her reflection shimmering in the glass, and she gasped softly, for the mirror did not show the room she stood in, but instead reflected spaces she had walked before and some she had never seen again. The missing hallway stretched before her, familiar and gone, and the vanished library appeared, its shelves full of handwritten journals, the scent of ink almost drifting from the glass. A whisper seemed to brush past her ear, soft and urgent. "Find the heart of the house," and Mara's pulse quickened, her fingers hovering over the smooth surface of the mirror, tracing her reflection as if trying to read a secret hidden beneath her own eyes. And she realized the glass held more than her image. It held echoes of the house's memory and whispers of rooms yet to be discovered. She sank onto a small velvet stool, the cushions warm beneath her, her mind spinning gently with wonder and curiosity. "Is it guiding me?" she murmured, the words barely louder than a breath, thinking of the letters and journals she had found, the shifting walls, the portraits, the quiet, breathing presence of the cottage that seemed to watch and listen, each reflection tugging at her heart, asking her to remember, to notice, to follow. Her eyes lingered on a room in the reflection she had never seen, its corners bathed in soft sunlight, the walls lined with strange wooden models and scattered sketches, the floor smooth and warm, calling to her with a quiet, insistent voice. Mara, feeling a gentle thrill and a quiet reverence, imagining her gradient moving through these spaces, leaving secrets to be discovered in careful patience. The air smelled faintly of lavender and wood smoke, the candle flames casting tiny, playful shadows across her skin, the floorboards creaking softly as if greeting her presence, and Mara felt the cottage breathe around her, alive with memory and quiet magic, the mirror both a window and a guide, carrying promises of discovery and gentle lessons for those willing to listen. She stood slowly, brushing her fingers against the edge of the mirror, her reflection rippling like water under her touch, whispering softly to the room, "I will find you, heart of the house," the words carrying warmth and hope, the shadows swaying with her. And as she stepped back toward the door, the candles flickered, the air shimmering slightly, leaving her with a quiet sense that the cottage had just shared another secret and that the next adventure waited patiently in the golden light. Morning light spilled through the windows, dust motes dancing like tiny stars across the wooden floor. And Mara sat at the little desk by the window, her pencil tapping softly against the paper as she studied the shifting layout of the cottage, the air warm with sunlight and the faint scent of cedar and ink. Carrying a quiet hum of anticipation, she had begun documenting each day's changes, sketching maps carefully, connecting rooms with lines and arrows, noting where doors had appeared or vanished, the way windows framed new views, the kitchen that had shifted corners overnight, the hallways that stretched or shrank without warning. And each stroke of her pencil felt like she was speaking gently to the house, asking it to tell its story. As she worked, Mara noticed a pattern, her breath catching softly. Certain rooms returned when she thought of someone from her past. The kitchen from her childhood, filled with the scent of cinnamon and bread. The attic her mother had used to hide gifts, glowing warmly with dust and sunlight. The cottage rearranging itself around her memories, as if it were listening to her heart, remembering with her. Her pencil paused above the paper as she whispered to herself, "It's like it knows me," the words barely more than a breath. And she felt a soft thrill, a quiet joy and wonder threading through her chest, imagining the gentle presence of her Gretant guiding her. The house, a living diary of memory and feeling, each shift a story, each hallway a quiet conversation between past and present. She leaned back in her chair, tracing the pencil lines with her fingers, feeling the paper warm under her touch, thinking of the moments that had returned. The laughter in the kitchen, the secret excitement in the attic, the soft comfort of being remembered. It's helping me. It wants me to remember, she murmured, a smile tugging at her lips. The cottage humming softly around her as if agreeing, breathing in time with her own heartbeat. The air smelled faintly of wax and wildflowers drifting from the garden outside, sunlight glinting on the polished floors. The faint creak of a floorboard under her weight sounding like a whispered encouragement, and Mara felt the cottage alive, a gentle pulse flowing through walls and doors, the soft sigh of old wood settling into place as it remembered, as it held space for her thoughts and memories. She marked another hallway and a door on her map, the lines connecting memories and rooms, the pencil scratching softly, her heart fluttering with quiet excitement, realizing that the house was not only showing her its secrets, but guiding her gently through her own past, a tender teacher wrapped in the magic of wood and sunlight. And as she set her pencil down, the sunlight spilling across her maps, the cottage humming softly around her, Mara felt a gentle anticipation for the next discovery, the room she had yet to find, waiting patiently in the quiet, golden light, whispering to her in shadows and sunlight, calling her to follow wherever the house wished to lead. Mara's hand lingered on the edge of the staircase, the polished wood smooth beneath her fingers, the morning light spilling in through the windows and dust motes dancing like tiny golden sparks, when she noticed a faint seam in the wall, almost invisible, as if it were holding its breath, waiting for her to discover it. With careful pressure, the wall gave way, revealing a narrow doorway tucked behind the stairs. The air, cool and scented faintly of pine and old paper, and Mara's heart fluttered with quiet excitement and wonder. She stepped through slowly, her feet brushing the worn wooden floorboards, the room welcoming her like a secret held just for her inside. The hidden space unfolded into her great-aunt's old studio, bathed in a gentle, golden glow from the sunlight streaming through a small window, the air thick with the scent of cedar, ink, and varnish. And the room was alive with quiet magic. Unfinished blueprints spread across a wide desk, sketches pinned carefully to the walls, and a strange wooden model of the cottage that shifted subtly as if breathing on its own. Mara circled the studio, her fingers brushing over the smooth wood of the model, feeling its warmth and gentle movement beneath her touch. The blueprints revealing designs for rooms that changed with light and shadow, hallways that shifted with memories, and corners that held stories long forgotten. And she whispered softly, "It's all alive, isn't it?" Her voice carrying the awe and reverence she felt. Her eyes fell upon a diary resting on the desk, the leather cover worn and familiar, the handwriting delicate and flowing, and as she opened it, her great-aunt's voice seemed to rise from the pages, explaining that the house was built with enchanted wood, a magic that mirrored the heart of its owner, that reflected their memories, healed old wounds, and guided them gently through both loss and love. Mara sank onto a stool, the warm wood beneath her comforting, her fingers tracing the words, feeling the care and intention behind each line, thinking of how the house had gently nudged her to remember her past, to reconnect with forgotten moments, to feel again the love of her family and the warmth of her great-aunt's presence. A gentle smile tugging at her lips, the air smelled faintly of ink and pine, sunlight sparkling on scattered sketches, and the shifting wooden model. the faint hum of the cottage around her like a lullaby, and Mara felt a quiet shiver of gratitude, the house holding her gently, encouraging her, wrapping her memories in warmth and understanding, the magic of the walls, floors, and beams seeping softly into her heart. She closed the diary and ran her fingers over the model once more, whispering softly, "Thank you for waiting for me," the words drifting through the quiet studio, the sunlight catching her hair, and as she stepped toward the doorway, the house seemed to exhale gently around her, carrying a soft promise that she had discovered not only a hidden room, but the heart of the cottage itself. And as Mara returned to the hallway, the warm light spilling over the polished floors, she felt the cottage hum gently, the walls and floors alive with memory, ready to guide her further. The next secret, waiting patiently in the quiet golden air, inviting her to follow wherever the heart of the house might lead. Morning sunlight spilled gently through the windows, painting the floors with soft gold, and Mara moved slowly through the cottage, her fingers brushing along the smooth wooden banisters, the air carrying the familiar scent of cedar and warm dust, the quiet hum of the house surrounding her like a gentle heartbeat. She paused in the hallway, noticing how the rooms seemed to shift subtly under her gaze, doors settling into new places, hallways stretching and aligning as if breathing with her. And Mara realized with a gentle thrill that the cottage was not just a house, but a living, listening companion, waiting for her to understand its purpose. Kneeling on the polished floor, she whispered softly, "Thank you," her voice carrying warmth and reverence, "for showing me my memories, for helping me remember, for helping me forgive." And as she spoke, the cottage responded in kind, the creak of floorboards softening, the walls seeming to lean gently inward, embracing her, each room unfolding slowly into a calm, familiar order. The kitchen returned to its cozy corner, the sitting room to its own warm nook, and sunlight glinted off the windows, the garden outside glowing with morning dew, while Mara moved through the hallways, touching the doors with careful reverence, feeling the warmth that seemed to rise from the wooden walls like a sigh of relief, a gentle, comforting exhale of the house itself. She paused in the center of the main room, her thoughts drifting to her childhood, 2 moments long tucked away, the laughter of her family, the quiet conversations of her grandaunt, the hidden corners that had held secrets and love alike. And she realized the house had been guiding her all along, arranging itself to help her heal, remember, and grow. Mara's heart swelled with gratitude, a soft smile touching her lips, and she spoke again. "I understand you now. I see all you've done for me," the words drifting in the warm air, the scent of cedar and sunlight blending into a quiet melody. And she felt the cottage respond, each floorboard, each beam, each door settling finally into place, as if sighing contentedly. The air shimmered faintly with warmth, the windows holding steady views of the garden and forest beyond, the gentle hum of life in the cottage steady and calm. And Mara felt a soft sense of peace, the house no longer restless, but resting alongside her, a companion and guardian of memories. Gentle and alive, yet serene, she ran her fingers along a familiar doorway, smiling softly, thinking of the many rooms she had wandered, the secrets uncovered, and the quiet love hidden in every corner. The cottage, now a reflection of her own heart, still and warm, and as she moved toward the staircase, the sunlight spilling across the floor, Mara felt a gentle pull, a whisper of anticipation for the final discovery waiting quietly, patiently in the next room. Sunlight streamed gently through the unmoving windows, spilling golden warmth across the wooden floors, the air calm and still, carrying the faint scent of cedar and wildflowers from the garden outside, and Mara stretched slowly, feeling the quiet rhythm of the cottage echoing in her chest. The house finally at rest, she padded barefoot to the kitchen, the worn floorboards creaking softly under her feet, the familiar warmth of the space wrapping around her like a soft blanket, and she began to brew tea, the kettle hissing gently as water met the heat, the comforting aroma rising and filling the room, the simple ritual grounding her in a moment of serene contentment. As she poured the steaming tea into her favorite cup, Mara's eyes drifted along the hallway, noticing the doors aligned perfectly, hallways steady and familiar, and a small, curious thrill ran through her, for there was one last door at the end of the hall, the only one she had never opened, its surface smooth and inviting, a gentle pull of mystery in its quiet presence. Her fingers hovered over the handle, heart fluttering softly, and she whispered to herself, "I wonder what you've been waiting to show me." The words drifting in the warm morning air, carrying both excitement and reverence, and she turned the handle with slow, careful patience, stepping inside as sunlight poured through a wide window, filling the room with warmth and light. The room was a sunroom, bathed in soft gold, the air fragrant with a hint of lavender and fresh air from the garden, the wooden floor glowing beneath her feet, and in the center rested a single letter, its envelope aged but carefully preserved, the handwriting delicate and familiar, as if her gratitude had been waiting for this very moment to reach out across time. Mara knelt beside the letter, her fingers trembling slightly, the warmth of the sunlight embracing her, and she read softly, her voice a quiet murmur, "You've found home," a simple message that carried the weight of love, memory, and belonging, the words settling into her heart like a gentle sigh of relief, connecting her to the cottage, her family, and her great-aunt's enduring presence. She closed her eyes for a moment, inhaling the soft scent of cedar and candle wax, feeling the sun on her cheeks, the gentle hum of the cottage around her, the warmth of the floors beneath her, and a deep, quiet joy filled her chest, a sense of peace and wonder threading through her thoughts. The house no longer shifting or restless, but steady, patient, and alive in stillness. Mara rose and moved to the window, the garden outside sparkling in sunlight, flowers swaying gently in a soft breeze, the cottage breathing calmly around her, and she whispered to the room, "Thank you for bringing me here, for showing me everything." Her words drifting in the golden light, a soft laugh of contentment escaping her lips. The house and heart entwined in quiet harmony, and as she sat back in the sunroom, cradling her warm cup of tea, the light spilling across the polished floors, Mara felt a gentle certainty that this was more than a home. It was a companion, a guardian of memories and love, and the cottage seemed to hum softly in agreement, holding her gently in its still, golden embrace.